Shano, can you pick up the audio from the... this is the president.
I know they're going to abide by certain norms and rules and common sense.
He's speaking about Donald Trump.
We'll observe basic decency.
And he's talking about other previous candidates, Republican candidates.
Have enough knowledge about economic policy and foreign policy and our constitutional traditions and rule of law that our government will work. And then we'll compete 4 years from now to try to win an election. But that's not the situation here. And that's not just my opinion. That is the opinion of many prominent Republicans. There has to come a point at which you say, enough. And the alternative is that the entire party, the Republican Party, effectively endorses and validates the positions that are being articulated by Mr. Trump.
There you go. So it's amazing when the president of the United States says that the guy running for the Republican position, the Republican presidential candidate, is unfit for office. That's pretty amazing. So apropos of that and the rant that I just did a few minutes ago, I just want to add, you know, there's a couple of eyebrow raisers in all this coverage of yesterday's visit to the Koch Brothers network of roughly 400 billionaires. The United States, by the way, has more billionaires than any country on earth, in large part because our tax code has made it, you know, so, I mean, you know, once your net income is over $50 or $100 million, it's very, very easy to get your income tax rates down, you know, in the neighborhood of 10 or 15%. You pay less taxes than the guy working at 7-Eleven. And for that matter, down to zero. I mean, you know, Mitt Romney paid no taxes at all for years. And you know, in all probability, we're seeing the same thing with Donald Trump. I'm guessing he's not releasing his taxes because he doesn't pay taxes. But Paul Ryan went before these billionaires, and in the Koch's twice-a-year seminars, this is by Mattia Gold in the Washington Post. And Ryan touted the importance of free trade, an issue Trump has railed against, and said it was essential that party leaders make a better case for the, quote, free market. The House Speaker is clearly a favorite of the Koch donor network and was received with a standing ovation and whoops. The audience interrupted him several times with hearty applause. Now, here's something that just, I mean, I read this and I was like, I had to read it twice to make sure I actually read what I saw. The Washington Post and other news outlets were invited to cover portions of the Koch seminar on the condition that they did not name donors in attendance without their permission. When did our news media start saying, yeah, we'll cover you on your terms? This is mind-boggling. The billionaires say to the Washington Post, well, the Washington Post is owned by a billionaire, Jeff Bezos, the guy who owns Amazon, but still, you know, they're saying to apparently everybody, sure, you can come. You just can't tell anybody who we are. So, number one, that's pretty mind-boggling. But this is actually the better story about this is not the Washington Post story. It's the one by Julian Hahn over at Breitbart, of all places. And she's speaking from Paul Ryan's hometown, Janesville, Wisconsin. And she writes, speaking at a lavish retreat for 400 donors hosted by a network helmed by libertarian billionaires Charles and David Koch, Paul Ryan suggested it was incumbent upon the party to repudiate the views of Republican voters who do not support Ryan and his donors' trade agenda. Ryan reportedly assured donors he will work to win some of these fights and advance their agenda on trade. And the president and the president or prime minister, whatever his title is, of Singapore were just on TV making this sales pitch. Singapore, a repressive nation. I've been to Singapore. In fact, one time I went to Singapore, it was to give a speech on education. And I gave the speech, and afterwards there was a Q&A, and a woman said, you know, asked me the question, what should we do to improve our schools? And I gave the American answer. I said, get involved, join your local school board, run for political office, start pressuring your politicians. And the room just went totally silent. Normally that's an applause line. Everybody was freaked. And afterward, my host said, I think you might have gotten us in trouble. So I got back to my hotel, and my recollection is I was staying at the Mandarin Oriental. It was one of those big, fancy five-star hotels that they put me up in, with a giant atrium. And I went up to my room, and my room had been trashed. I mean, the mattress had been dragged off the bed. All the drawers were open. The stuff in my suitcase was all over the floor. And I called hotel security, and I said, what's happened? And they said, oh, the police were here. That's Singapore. So anyhow, we should have a trade deal with them, yeah. So the House Speaker, and back to the article, the House Speaker is clearly a favorite of the Koch donor network. This is from the Washington Post, and he was received with a standing ovation and whoops. The audience interrupted him several times with hearty applause. Ryan told donors that the views of Republican voters must be repudiated. Keep in mind, according to Pew, only 11% of Republican voters support free trade agreements. 5-1 Republican voters believe that this kills jobs. And what did Ryan say? He said, we've got to, we are flirting with various forms of progressivism, and there are Republicans' forms of progressivism. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. We have to thoroughly debunk it and repudiate it. The fight for the soul of our party and our country is over the issue of international trade. Now, Ryan's being primaried by a guy named Paul Nealon. He's a Republican. He's a Tea Party Republican, but he's a Trump Tea Party Republican in that he hates free trade. And Nealon has said that if Ryan is sent back to Washington, he will, quote, ram through the job-killing Trans-Pacific Partnership right after the election. I believe it. I believe it.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.